Imagine walking along the edge of a vast, silent lake. The air is heavy, thick with the smell of sulfur and salt. The water before you is not blue, but a haunting, viscous crimson, like a wound stretched across the earth. But that is not the most unsettling sight. Along the shoreline, you find them. A dove, its wings outstretched, as if in its final, desperate flutter, is now made of grey stone. A bat, its leathery wings and tiny, snarling face, perfectly preserved, hangs from a calcified branch. A fish eagle, its talons still clenched, is a grotesque statue, its eyes a milky white. They are not fossils, not ancient relics dug from the earth. They are recent, their forms so perfectly intact you expect them to shatter at a touch. This is not a scene from a Greek myth. This is Lake Natron, a real place in northern Tanzania. A body of water that appears to turn living creatures into stone. What terrifying alchemical process is at work here? What force of nature could create such a macabre gallery of the dead, preserving them with the precision of a taxidermist? And most disturbingly, how could a place so toxic, so seemingly antithetical to existence, also be the cradle for millions of new lives? The truth is not found in mythology, but in a unique geological signature so violent and so specific, it has created an environment that exists almost nowhere else on Earth. The story of Lake Natron is a journalistic investigation into the razor-thin line between life and death. The world might have remained ignorant of this bizarre natural phenomenon were it not for the obsessive eye of a single photographer. In the early 2010s, English artist Nick Brandt was traveling through East Africa, documenting the region's disappearing natural grandeur. His work was known for its stark, almost portrait-like quality, capturing the majesty and soul of animals in a way few had before. He'd heard whispers of a strange lake in a remote, punishingly hot corner of Tanzania, a place the local Maasai treated with a mixture of reverence and fear. He heard tales of birds falling from the sky and being encased in salt. Intrigued by these unsettling rumors, he made the arduous journey to the shores of Lake Natron. What he found there defied all logical explanation. The shoreline was a graveyard. Scattered along the caustic, muddy flats were the calcified bodies of countless birds and bats. Brandt described the experience in his book, Across the Ravaged Land, with a sense of profound shock. He wrote, "I unexpectedly found the creatures, all manner of birds and bats, washed up along the shoreline of Lake Natron. No one knows for certain exactly how they die, but it appears that the extreme reflective nature of the lake's surface confuses them, and like birds crashing into a plate glass window, they crash into the lake." The personal stakes for Brandt were immense. This was not merely a landscape to be photographed. It was a surreal tableau that needed to be documented before it was disbelieved. He carefully collected the stone-like carcasses, their bodies hardened by the lake's chemical brew. He then carried them back to the shore and arranged them in living positions, reanimating them for one final haunting portrait. A swallow perched on a twig, a flamingo standing in the shallows. Each photograph was a meticulously staged resurrection. Brandt's mission became to translate this impossible reality into an image, to force the world to confront this place where life was so brutally and beautifully frozen in time. To understand Lake Natron, one cannot simply look at its water. One must look deep into the earth beneath it. The lake sits within the eastern branch of the Great Rift Valley, one of the most geologically volatile and spectacular landscapes on the planet. This is a place where the African continent is literally tearing itself apart, a process that has been ongoing for millions of years. This tectonic violence has given birth to a chain of volcanoes, and one of them, looming over the southern end of Lake Natron, is the key to the entire mystery. The local Maasai people call it Ol Doinyo Lengai, which translates to the Mountain of God. For centuries, they have revered it as a sacred place, the home of their deity, Engai. They have watched its periodic eruptions not as random geological events, but as signs of their god's mood, a divine force that could give life or take it away. Early European explorers who ventured into this region in the late 19th and early 20th centuries were baffled. They filed reports of a vast, foul-smelling lake that shimmered under the oppressive sun, a place seemingly devoid of life, save for flocks of pink birds in the distance. They noted the high salinity and the strange, soapy feel of the water, but they lacked the scientific tools to comprehend the extreme chemistry at play. The fear and misunderstanding surrounding the lake grew. It became a place of myth, a cursed body of water where life could not exist. This perception was rooted in a fundamental truth. The lake was dangerous, but it failed to grasp the intricate scientific reasons why. The escalation of fear was fueled by the visceral evidence on its shores, the perfectly preserved bodies of animals that had trespassed and paid the ultimate price. The mountain of God, it seemed, had created a lake that acted as its unforgiving enforcer. Our investigation into the deadly nature of Lake Natron begins not with biology, but with chemistry. The water is what is known as a soda lake or an alkaline lake. While most freshwater lakes have a pH between 6 and 8, Lake Natron's pH is consistently above 10.5 and can even reach 12, a level of alkalinity comparable to that of ammonia or bleach. Contact with this water is incredibly dangerous for most animals. It can strip away the skin and burn the eyes of any creature not adapted to its caustic embrace. But where does this extreme alkalinity come from? The answer lies with its creator, the Oldoinyo Lengai volcano. According to a landmark study in the journal Science on the volcano's geochemistry, Oldoinyo Lengai is the only active volcano on Earth that erupts a unique type of lava called nitrocarbonatite. Unlike typical volcanoes that spew silicate-based lava, this lava is rich in rare sodium and potassium carbonates. When it rains in this arid region, the water flows down the slopes of the volcano, collecting these highly soluble carbonate minerals and washing them into the basin of Lake Natron, where there is no outlet. Over thousands of years, the relentless sun evaporates the water, concentrating these minerals to an extraordinary degree. The primary compound is sodium carbonate decahydrate, also known as natron. This is the very same substance the ancient Egyptians used in their mummification rituals to draw out moisture and preserve bodies. This brings us to the second stage of our investigation, the process of calcification. The animals found by Nick Brandt are not truly turned to stone in a geological sense, a process which would take millions of years. Instead, they undergo a rapid chemical preservation. When an animal dies and falls into the lake, the water's high concentration of natron immediately begins to act. As researchers from the University of Leicester's Department of Geology have noted, the process is akin to a chemical bath. The sodium carbonate acts as a powerful desiccant, pulling all the fluid from the body's tissues. Simultaneously, it creates an environment with such a high pH that the bacteria and microorganisms that would normally cause decomposition cannot survive. The body is effectively sterilized. As the natron solution permeates the tissues, it precipitates, forming a hard, crystalline crust of sodium carbonate salts around and within the body. This encrustation happens relatively quickly, locking the animal's form in place before it can decay. Feathers, skin, and even internal organs are encased in this mineral shell, creating the lifelike statues that litter the shoreline. It's a perfect, if morbid, form of mummification, courtesy of a volcano. Now, we must address the lake's startling appearance. The blood-red color that often characterizes its surface is not due to minerals or pollutants, but to life itself. This is perhaps the lake's greatest paradox. In these hypersaline and hyperalkaline conditions, a specialized group of microorganisms known as extremophiles don't just survive, they flourish. A 2011 study published in the International Journal of Microbiology identified several species of salt-loving cyanobacteria as the primary culprits. In the shallower parts of the lake, where salinity is highest due to evaporation, these organisms multiply into vast, dense mats. One of the most prominent is a species of spirulina. These bacteria contain photosynthetic pigments, including chlorophyll, which is green, but also phycoerythrins, which are red. In the intense sunlight and extreme salinity of Lake Natron, the red pigments dominate, turning the water a shocking crimson. The color is a living indicator of the lake's hostility. The redder the water, the more saline and inhospitable it is to most forms of life. This brings us to the most profound mystery of all. If Lake Natron is a chemical death trap that mummifies its victims, how is it simultaneously the single most important breeding ground on the planet for the lesser flamingo? Nearly 75% of the world's population of this species, some 2.5 million birds, are born on the shores of this deadly lake. This is not a coincidence. The flamingos breed here because it is so deadly. Ornithologists studying their behavior, like those from the University of Glasgow, have identified a trifecta of adaptations that make this possible. First, their legs are covered in tough, scaly skin that is resistant to the caustic burns of the alkaline water. They can wade through the shallows without injury. Second, when they need to drink, they can seek out freshwater springs and seepages that flow into the lake's perimeter, avoiding the toxic main body of water. But the most crucial factor is protection. During the dry season, as the water level recedes, vast salt islands and mudflats emerge from the lake. The flamingos build their mound-like nests on these islands. The surrounding water, a caustic moat of pH 12, creates a perfect natural barrier against predators like hyenas or jackals. No land-based predator can cross the deadly water to reach the nests, making Lake Natron the safest flamingo nursery in the world. They have turned the lake's greatest weapon into their greatest defense. Finally, our investigation must confront the central myth. The popular image of Lake Natron is that of a Medusa, instantly turning any bird that touches its surface to stone. This is a dramatic and compelling narrative, but it is not scientifically accurate. The calcification process is not instantaneous. The animals found on the shore did not die because they simply dipped a foot in the water. As Nick Brandt himself theorized, many likely died after becoming disoriented by the lake's highly reflective, mirror-like surface and crashing into it at high speed, much like a bird flying into a window. Others may have died of natural causes and then washed into the lake or onto its shores. The mummification process began only after death. Brandt was also clear to point out the element of artistic intervention in his famous photographs. He stated in his book's appendix, "The creatures are all found as is, but they are not as found. I have taken these creatures that I have found on the shoreline, and I have then placed them in living positions. This act of journalistic and artistic integrity is crucial. He wasn't documenting a magical event. He was arranging the victims of a bizarre chemical process to tell a more powerful story about the fragility of life in this extreme environment. The lake is not a sorcerer, but a relentless, indifferent chemist. The definitive revelation, the moment the entire puzzle of Lake Natron snaps into focus, is not found in the water, but in the heart of the volcano that feeds it. The shocking truth is that this entire seemingly supernatural ecosystem is the direct and unique consequence of Oldoinho Lengai's natrocarbonatite lava. This type of lava is unlike almost any other on Earth. As confirmed by volcanologists at the Deep Carbon Observatory, it erupts at a much lower temperature, around 500 to 600 degrees Celsius, compared to the 1,200 degrees of typical basaltic lava. This is so cool for lava that it often appears black or dark brown in sunlight, rather than glowing red. It is also far less viscous, flowing almost like water, but its most critical feature is its chemical composition. It is almost entirely devoid of silica and is instead composed of sodium and potassium carbonates. When this unique material weathers and erodes, it creates the precise chemical soup that makes Lake Natron what it is. This is the defining discovery. Lake Natron is not a random chemical anomaly. It is a direct, liquid expression of its parent volcano's geologic soul. The shift in perspective this brings is profound. We move from seeing the lake as a place of inexplicable death to understanding it as a logical, albeit extreme, ecosystem. The very same chemical properties that make the water a deadly trap for most animals are what create the protective moat for the flamingos. The toxicity is the key to the nursery's success. The horror and the beauty are not opposing forces. They are inextricably linked, two outcomes of the same rare geochemistry. The mountain of God does not dispense curses or blessings. It simply provides the raw ingredients. And life, in its relentless drive to continue, adapts to the consequences in the most extraordinary ways imaginable. The implications of what happens at Lake Natron extend far beyond the borders of Tanzania. This bizarre landscape serves as a crucial natural laboratory for scientists exploring some of the most fundamental questions about existence. For astrobiologists, Lake Natron is a powerful terrestrial analogue for what life might look like on other worlds. Planets like Mars are thought to have had highly saline, alkaline lakes in their past. If life ever existed there, it may have resembled the extremophile bacteria that thrive in Natron's crimson waters. Studying these organisms helps scientists understand what biological signatures to look for when searching for life beyond Earth. The story of the lake also carries a stark modern-day warning. This unique and fragile ecosystem is under threat. In 2006, Tata Chemicals of India proposed the construction of a massive soda ash extraction plant on the shores of the lake, a project that would have involved pumping vast quantities of brine and altering the lake's hydrology. Though the plan was ultimately withdrawn in 2008 after intense international pressure from conservation groups like the RSPB, the threat of industrial development remains. Such a project could disrupt the delicate salinity balance, potentially destroying the food source for the flamingos and collapsing the entire ecosystem. Lake Natron forces us to confront a universal theme: the astonishing tenacity of life. It demonstrates that existence can flourish not just in spite of hostile conditions, but because of them. It challenges our very definition of what constitutes a habitable environment, showing us that nature's creativity is born from its most brutal and unforgiving forces. So we return to the image that first captured our imagination: the silent stone bird on the shore of a blood-red lake. At the beginning of our investigation, it was a symbol of a terrifying, inexplicable power, a victim of a mythological curse. Now, armed with the knowledge of geochemistry and evolutionary adaptation, we see it differently. It is no longer just a casualty, it is a monument. It is a testament to the singular geology of the Mountain of God, a perfectly preserved record of a unique chemical process that connects a volcano's heart to a flamingo's nursery. Professor David's insight here is that we often seek to impose our own narratives of good and evil, life and death, onto the natural world. But nature itself is indifferent to these concepts. Its processes are governed by chemistry and physics, not by malice or intent. The forces that create a perfect cradle for one species can just as easily create a perfect tomb for another. The story of Lake Natron is a powerful reminder that our planet's most unsettling landscapes are often its most instructive. And so, we are left with a final provocative question. In our quest to understand the world, how many other places have we dismissed as merely cursed or barren, when, in fact, they hold the secrets to life's most extreme and brilliant solutions?